Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. It is now time for another Marvel May video. This time I'll be covering the X-Men. Even though, there is an ongoing X-Men animated TV series, X-Men '97, I still want to bring or showcase my spin on the X-Men. For those of you who haven't seen the last video, I'm here to let you know that Marvel May is obviously a theme month, and over the course of this theme month, I will be giving my suggestions as to how I think a new Marvel animated series is supposed to look like, one fictional property at a time. And this time it is up to the X-Men are on the chopping block, so to speak. Also, all pictures you are about to see are either from the Marvel Fandom Wiki or are presumed to be in the public domain. I do not claim any ownership of any image presented. And I'm going to showcase my concepts over the course of this video for a free season show, with each season having 13 episodes ish. So yeah, those are the parameters I'm working with over the course of this video, just so we have that settled. And now that we have all of that settled, it's time I actually get into it. This is not the first time I've been thinking about how to bring the X-Men into an adaptation of the broader Marvel story. In fact, I have at least one video where I talked about 4 potential paths of doing so. And to some extent, this video will touch upon all of them, starting with the very beginning of the show, which covers the path of Charles Xavier in the beginning of his school. And just like with last video where I talked about a Captain America show and decided to start it out in the 40s, this episode will also have a little bit more of a retro chic flair, in that I am having it start out in the 60s. And it will start with the Charles Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters, a school started by Chuck here, where mutants go to study. And his first class is consists of the people displayed here around him. So we got Iceman, Cyclops, Angel, Beast, and Jean Grey, the Mandatory Girl. And just like in that previous video where I talked about the Xavier path, I think the first villain of this series, so the one that they will be tackling in the first 1 or 2 episodes, depending on whether it will be a single episode or a 2-parter, is the Juggernaut. Yes, I know that Magneto was the X-Men's first villain. I know that sorry, I got a little notification there, that's why I stopped. Anyway, I know Magneto was the X-Men's first villain. However, I think putting Juggernaut in here will be a better will serve as a better representation of what I think the overall message of this franchise going ahead is actually going to be, or is actually supposed to be. Regardless, the episode will, these 2 episodes will follow the a simple enough premise. We get to learn about the school, get to see who is part of it, and then there is a warning maybe on TV, about local TV, to be more precise, about Juggernaut going on a rampage. The X-Men decide to go out and stop him. Only, they're except the fact that they are immature teens who don't know how to, who have no, who have a somewhat skill, who even though have some level of trauma or ostracization behind them due to being, uh, persecuted minorities, in this case mutants, they still don't really know how to they still don't know how to tackle adult issues. So they try to so they try to stop the Juggernaut, but he eventually but they find themselves incapable to do so and and suffer their massive defeat, which leads to them fleeing back to the X Mansion, where they get a lesson in maturity by from Xavier, only to find that Juggernaut has been following them, and when Juggernaut makes it to the X Mansion, which I will remind you is also his childhood home, I kind of want him to walk right up to his wheelchair-bound brother, and have that confrontation, because I think that confrontation is really crucial in terms of the philosophy of conflict that the X-Men and potentially even Marvel as a whole is actually built around. It's about not bowing down to. It's about how violence, unless it is used to protect others, it is born from fear or a result or a desire for domination, a wrongful desire for domination, a desire to a desire to subvert the wants of others, specifically because that is a display of dominance. That is a display of taking away someone's autonomy, and in that sense, you have the physical specimen Juggernaut going up against going against a disabled minority, and in the form of his half brother, and Charles would stand up to him, metaphorically speaking, and tell him, "No, I will not cower away from you. I will not be scared. I will not be scared by you." And it is through this example that the that his students ultimately learn, ultimately figure out exactly what it is that he wanted to say, and they find that heroic second window allows them to push him out, to drive him away from their home. And that will be how the first episode ends, potentially with an epilogue featuring Magneto, who will have noticed, who will have observed the news, and decide that this would be the time for him to strike, and the next adventure of the X-Men would feature them stopping Magneto from basically triggering World War III. Basically triggering World War III, and as he observes how he has been combated, he decides that his old frenemy Charles seems to have not only drawn his line in the sand, but also assembled his army, and that is what he decides to do. As well. And I imagine the first, I'll say, half of the season will unfold somewhat in this episodic manner, with with a mutant villain showing up doing some damage, the good guy mutants, X-Men, showing up, and maybe giving a lesson, giving something of a demonstration that not all mutants are bad, and of themselves, and that you can find I don't know, you can find redemption, or that you should listen to people, or you should judge people by how they act towards you, not by how they could act towards you, by what you're afraid they might how you are afraid they might act towards you. They couldn't, however, among those villains they might face, they might also, they might also encounter sentinels, so in that way it would be a more, i.e., the actual majority power in this society taking more decisive action against them, and I imagine that could present an interesting dilemma within the series as a whole, as to whether or not the mutants in the universe should still follow the Xavier assimilationist path or the Magneto retaliatory path. And this difference in approaches would perhaps come to clash. Would come to clash, aside from in Magneto's first appearance, perhaps also in his second appearance, where he actually gathers a brotherhood around himself, and maybe even and I see the finale as being a freeway conflict between the between the mutant registration program, which has an army of sentinels at ready to declare martial law against this specific minority, and specific minority on the one hand, Magneto's Brotherhood on the other, and the and the X-Men and the X-Men on this third apparent hand that exists. So I think having those, that is basically the approach I want to. That is basically the approach. That is basically the story I want to tackle. With two parties going full violence, and the third going, there is a different way, which would, and also playing a little bit into the sociological game, in the sociological or charisma PR game. To that end, it could be said that Xavier has the highest potential ceiling in that game, but whether he actually reaches it is a separate matter altogether. But those are basically the battle lines I have drawn. Also, over the course of the season, more and more mutants would join the X team, and I think all of them should have at least one episode where they get to where they get to shine, get to really display what it is that they are capable of doing, and what their characters are actually about. And in that way, by the end of the season, the X-Men should be a pretty sizable cast that are nevertheless interesting figures. And with that, we move into season 2. And season 2, I see as a series of adaptations of three very particular comic book story arcs. The first comic book arc I would see which should be adapted would be the first appearance of the Hellfire Club, aka the Phoenix Saga, or the first part of the Phoenix Saga. And this would imply that there are perhaps generations of X-Men, with some being professors at the sorry about that, with some being professors at the Xavier Institute, and others being students of the same, and getting to grips with their powers, maybe even generally being and even generally like growing up, coming of age, so to speak. Regardless, the Phoenix Saga is a little bit of a different beast in that it sees them, and it kind of sees the established X-Men getting overpowered by this, new out of left field threat. However, I think it serves as a good challenging ground for the next generation who find out that their professors are indisposed, and they decide to step up in order to help them in the same way their professors have. And towards that end, they mount their own offensive against the Hellfire Club, even fighting against the Phoenix herself, in order to manage to release their release their mentors. Maybe even one of their mentors manages to lead them on their journey. That could be a potential storyline. The next storyline that I would want to see adapted in the second season is Days of Future Past. I know there's already been a feature film about it, and it has also been adapted in the X-Men animated series over 30 years ago. But I still think it is an interesting story still, and it is one that I think would be worth telling. And particularly now that the younger generation of X-Men will have been quite effectively established with the with the advent of the given that they have been active within the first stage of the Phoenix Saga. I see this story going back and forth between the X-Men's present and the actual dark dystopian, and between their dark dystopian future, which would take place not in our present, but a little bit earlier. Let's say either turn of the millennium or slightly after that, because I kind of want this whole series to be retro chic, to that extent. So anyway, we are in this. In the dark future, there are very few X-Men or X-Men affiliated characters that are still alive, and they are running from place to place in order to keep themselves, trying to survive as effectively as they can in what is for all intents and purposes a police state. Which, even though a police state, I could even go around and throw the F word, fascist, around, because even though it is specifically one that is specifically aimed at containing them, but also has ramifications against the rest of humanity, because, separating them is not always easy, and also opportunists could use any justification that would oppress mutants in order to oppress everyone else as well. Yeah, sorry, bad for a day for some reason. And this ragtag bunch of mutants that we're following decides to throw the equivalent of a Hail Mary, send the awareness of one of them back to a past self, in order to prevent this bad present as they see it from occurring. And I think the story could be centered around Kitty Pryde, or some iteration of or some iteration of Kitty Pryde, who would have her awareness sent back into her her teenage body, and using her position, her connection to both the established X-Men and to the younger generation, in order to mobilize them into preventing this bad future. I imagine I imagine this story would take a somewhat similar twist to what the Days of Future Past movie did. Just to make just make the just make a, just to I can't talk anymore. Just to lengthen the story a little bit. By that I mean that. By that I mean that even if they stop or delay the thing that initially starts the thing that initially causes the bad future from occurring, there is still a complication that emerges that emerges in the past, which makes them have to take immediate action as soon as possible. And also in the future, this team still has to run around, still has to keep themselves, still has to keep themselves from acquiring any harm that could come, to them due to their, due to their situations. And I'm not gonna bore you too much with how exactly it's supposed to how exactly the action story is supposed to go on, but I will say that the sorry about that. I will say that the ending of the story should mirror that of the comic more closely, where after not just the initial point of contention is addressed, but also its ramifications, we don't flash back to the future. We stay, we the audience as well as the characters stay in the present, and someone asks, "Well, is that it? Did we prevent it?" To which, either Xavier or someone else who would have a, would take on a somewhat of a wise mentor role within the, within the group that actually stops the bad future from occurring, will say, "Only time will tell," because that really is the best ending you could give in with a story like this. Keep that Damocles sword far enough away to not be in constant awareness, but still close enough to where yeah, this is the kind of thing you have to look out for. And finally, the third story I want to cover within this second season, the Dark Phoenix saga. You really don't need me to cover. You don't really need me to tell you how that would unfold. There has already been one decent animated adaptation. I kind of want this new adaptation to follow that, same spirit. Maybe potentially make it a little bit darker, more in line with the, more in line with the comics. Nevertheless, the ending should still for the most part be a happy one. As we move into season 3, and for season 3, I actually have I also want it to be built around 3 story arcs, but I want these 3 story arcs to be more or less wholly original. The first one will be 2 words: Genosian Invasion. What do I mean by that? Well, by that I mean that after the events of the second season, which will see mutants and mutant activism having a quite prominent role within general society, and even mutants themselves being heroes, so to speak, to the extent that they save the world from an alien menace, aka the Phoenix Force. It is decided by the governments of the world that the mutants should have a country of their own, and this remote island vacation paradise that was Genosha, that was secretly built upon mutant slave labor, is decided to be their once and future nation, because after all they kind of built it. I am deliberating as to whether there should be there should be an episode uh, covering or discussing Genosha to any extent, but regardless, for the sake of our purposes, it exists and it is bequeathed to mutant kind as a homeworld. And I think Xavier would be the first guy who would be who is made the offer to be its president, but he would decline. The second guy who receives that offer, Magneto, will not decline. And in the beginning of the third season, or at any point after the after the Genosian state is established, I very much see Magneto lashing out against his neighbors for any perceived slights, because he sees himself as a vulnerable minority and wants to bring his neighbors to the he wants to bring his neighbors under heel in order to make sure that they don't even think about rising up against him. In case you're wondering, yes, this is a very unsubtle parallel to the Israel-Palestine conflict. It is very much a touchy subject, considering not just the times we live in, but the fact that the X-Men themselves were created by Jewish writers and artists. However, I think it is the kind of story that very much needs to be told, and people need to see that even if you generally agree with what some people lay claim of as a cause, that cause can still be born, out of fear or out of a drive to dominate, out of a drive to usurp the freedoms, the liberties of other people, and that is bad regardless of who's doing it for what and for what reasons. So yeah, for that reason, the first story arc I want this third season to cover is a Genosian invasion or a Genosian expansion story arc. The second story arc I want to cover will have the second original story arc I want this third season to cover will feature Mr. Sinister as its main threat. It could be that Cyclops, Jean Grey, or any number of other mutants start to have like PTSD flashbacks of some kind of their dark childhoods, whatever said childhood ends up actually ended up being, depending on how the backstories revealed so far will actually shape up, and it is from these reawakenings and from what it is that they are prompted by, that the X-Men get to confront Nathaniel Essex, or more precisely, Mr. Sinister, any potential clones of his, any other mutants he has assembled around himself, and as they contend with whatever whatever threat whatever threat he presents. And this is the story where we can go a little bit more into the horror aspects and really delve into the darkest facets of exploitation and of being and of what being a minority without civil rights or without the protection of the law would actually look like. You can't go you can't really go as dark as you could go for a variety of reasons. However, Mr. Sinister has been adapted quite effectively in other iterations of the X-Men, so I have so I have plenty of confidence that this that this story can unfold quite effectively. And after that, story unfolds, the whoever he experimented on were held captive could either join the X-Men, start to do their own things with their lives, or potentially even join Magneto, because again they have this because they have had this fear with them, and they want to no longer be victimized by it. As the X-Men dig through and look at what Mr. Sinister was working on, he realizes that his entire life's work was all put in place in order to prevent the return or the resurgence of Apocalypse and Sabach Nur. And so yeah, I really want Apocalypse to be the big bad of the last the last arc of my X-Men adaptation, because very much Apocalypse is the final boss of the X-Men, and therefore he has to show up as the biggest, most meaningful menace in the entire show. I debate somewhat as to whether he should be freshly awoken from his ancient Egyptian tomb, like I already had him be in the movie, or whether or not he should, to some extent, already be active, and maybe even having previously tangled with Nathaniel Essex before he became Mr. Sinister. Assuming we go down that route, which is at least a little bit more plausible for the for this adaptation, Apocalypse could simply be awakened, maybe somehow also have an external connection to the outer world, and build some kind of industrial basis from which he would put in place his initiative to take over the world, because of course that's the kind of thing he does. That's the kind of thing he would do. And this is very much the kind of thread where I imagine the where I would imagine the X-Men and Magneto's Brotherhood, potentially the armed forces surrounding them, stepping up in order to contend with Apocalypse's forces, and have the last episode somewhat similar to how Power Rangers shows typically do it. The last episode should be one huge series of action sequences, one after the other, all led by the driving conflict force that is Apocalypse, followed by a brief epilogue covering how all the characters are doing and what exactly they set out to do as for their or within their futures. And yeah, that was basically it. That was my suggestion for how the X-Men, for what the next animated X-Men adaptation after X-Men 97 should look like. I very much hope you enjoyed it. If you did, well then please like the video. Maybe even share this. Maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the idea of an X-Men animated reboot in and of itself, or with regards to my approach to to how this kind of reboot should be handled, well, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe, and ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where I talk about uh, book reviews and literature, a link to which you can find in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. If you are not interested in my thoughts on book topics, on literature, then I suggest you stay on this channel where aside from videos about X-Men, I talk about I talk about a variety of adaptations, remakes, and the general philosophies and narrative analyses, but also occasionally talk about politics, about video games, even play them, that kind of thing. Really anything that I can think of. If none of what I've said interests you, then or catches your attention, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was all I had to say. So until next time, I have been the One Take Man.